You're about to learn something that will completely change how you handle every argument, every disagreement, every power struggle with women. And I guarantee you're making this mistake right now. Every single man watching this is making this mistake. You think you're being strong, you think you're setting boundaries, but you're actually destroying your own authority every time you open your mouth. Let me explain what's really happening when a woman doesn't listen to you, and more importantly, what you're doing wrong that makes it worse. Picture this scenario. You tell her something bothers you. Maybe she's going out too much. Maybe she's texting someone late at night. Maybe she's disrespecting you in front of friends. You express yourself clearly, calmly, like a mature adult. And what happens? She dismisses you completely. You're being controlling. You're insecure. I can do whatever I want. Sound familiar? Of course it does, because this is every man's reality. You try to communicate and she acts like you didn't even speak. So what do? You do what every man does. You talk louder, you explain more, you bring logic, facts, evidence. You turn into a lawyer presenting your case. But you said last week. This is the third time. Any reasonable person would agree. And the more you talk, the less she respects you. The more you explain, the weaker you become. You're literally talking yourself out of her respect. Every word is another nail in the coffin of your relationship. Here's what you don't understand. When you argue with a woman, when you try to convince her with words, you're playing a game you can never win. Not because women are better at arguing, though they often are, but because the moment you engage in verbal combat, you've already lost. You've shown her that her opinion has power over you. You've demonstrated that you need her agreement, her validation, her permission. You've revealed yourself as someone who can be controlled through conflict. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I was with this girl who would constantly test boundaries, going to clubs with her single friends, keeping her ex on social media, flirting with other guys right in front of me. And every time I would sit her down, have the talk, I'd explain why it was disrespectful, how it made me feel, what I expected in a relationship. You know what she did? She'd nod, agree, promise to change, then do the exact same thing the next weekend, and I'd have the same conversation again, like a broken record, like an idiot. One day, something clicked. I realized I was training her to not listen to me. Every time I used words instead of actions, I was teaching her that my boundaries were just suggestions, that my standards were negotiable, that I was all talk, no consequences. I was literally programming her to disrespect me, and then getting angry when she followed the program I created. You see, women don't respond to words the way men do. When a man gives his word, it usually means something. We shake hands on a deal, that's a contract. We say we'll do something, we feel obligated to do it. But women, words are just emotional expression in the moment. They're not contracts. They're not promises. They're just how she feels right now. And feelings change every 5 minutes. So when you try to hold her to her words, you're speaking different languages. Think about it. How many times has she said, "I'm fine," when she's clearly not fine? How many times has she said nothing's wrong when everything's wrong? How many times has she said, "I don't care where we eat," then rejected every restaurant you suggested? Her words don't match reality because words aren't how she communicates. She communicates through emotions and actions. But you keep trying to communicate through logic and words. No wonder she doesn't listen. The mistake all men make is believing that communication solves problems. That if you just explain yourself better, if you just find the right words, if you just make her understand your perspective, everything will be fixed. But here's the brutal truth. She already understands. She's not confused about what you want. She just doesn't care, because you've shown her through your actions that there are no real consequences for ignoring you. Let me paint you a picture. She tells you she's going to Vegas for a bachelorette party. You don't like it. You express your concerns. She goes anyway. What do? You stay home like a good boy, maybe send some passive-aggressive texts, then when she comes back, you have another discussion about boundaries. You know what she learned? That she can do whatever she wants, and the worst thing that happens is she has to listen to you complain. That's not a consequence, that's a minor inconvenience. Now imagine instead, she goes to Vegas, you go radio silent. She comes back, you're not home. You're gone for 3 days. No explanation, no discussion, no argument, just gone. When you return and she freaks out, you simply say, "Oh, I thought we were taking separate vacations now. You took yours, I took mine." Then you go about your business. No arguing, no explaining, no defending, just natural consequences. Which approach do you think actually changes behaviour? Which one makes her think twice next time? The 3-hour relationship talk where you share your feelings, or the 3 days where you showed her what her choices create? Actions are the only language that everyone understands. Words are just noise, but men are terrified of taking action. You know why? Because you're afraid of losing her. You're so scared she'll leave that you'd rather be disrespected than alone. You'd rather have a woman who doesn't listen to you than no woman at all. And she knows this. She can smell your fear like a shark smells blood. The moment she realizes you won't walk away, you've lost all leverage. You're negotiating from a position of weakness. Let me tell you about leverage. In any relationship, the person who needs the other person less has more power. It's not fair, it's not romantic, but it's true. And most men give away all their power by being too available, too accommodating, too desperate to keep her happy. You clear your schedule when she calls, you cancel plans with friends to see her, you change your entire life to fit her preferences, and then you wonder why she doesn't respect you. You've shown her you have no life outside of her. Why would she value something that's so easily obtained? I'll tell you something else. When a woman consistently doesn't listen to you, when she regularly dismisses your concerns, when she repeatedly violates your boundaries, she's already gone. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, she's checked out. She doesn't respect you anymore. She sees you as optional, as controllable, as weak. She's just keeping you around until something better comes along, or until she's extracted whatever value she can from you. This is hard for men to accept. You think because she's still there, because she still sleeps with you occasionally, because she still says, "I love you" sometimes, that everything is fine. But women can compartmentalize in ways men can't understand. She can be planning her exit while acting completely normal. She can be emotionally invested in someone else while living in your house. She can have already moved on in her mind while her body is still present. You want to know the real reason women don't listen to men? Because most men don't deserve to be listened to. Harsh, sure. True, absolutely. You say one thing and do another. You set boundaries, then immediately break them yourself. You threaten consequences you never follow through on. You're inconsistent, unpredictable, unreliable. Why should she take you seriously when you don't even take yourself seriously? Every time you say, "This is the last time," and it's not the last time, you lose credibility. Every time you say, "I won't tolerate this," then tolerate it, you lose respect. Every time you threaten to leave, then don't leave, you become a joke. You're the boy who cried wolf, except instead of a wolf, you're crying about boundaries you'll never enforce. Women test men. It's not conscious, it's not malicious, it's biological. They need to know if you're strong enough to handle them. Can you stand firm when they push? Can you maintain frame when they're emotional? Can you be the rock when they're the storm? And most men fail these tests spectacularly. The moment she raises her voice, you either crumble or explode. Either way, you've shown you can't handle pressure. I remember this one relationship where every time we had a disagreement, she would threaten to leave. Pack her bags, storm out dramatically, the whole performance. First time it happened, I panicked. Begged her to stay, promised to change, did everything wrong. You know what that taught her? That threatening to leave got her whatever she wanted. It became her nuclear option for winning any argument. Then one day, she did it again. Packed her bags, headed for the door, waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. I helped her pack. I held the door open. I said, "If you're unhappy enough to leave, then you should leave. I want you to be happy." The look on her face was priceless. Complete shock. She didn't actually want to leave. It was just a manipulation tactic. But I called her bluff. She never threatened to leave again. 11. Here's what really happens during an argument. She gets emotional, starts yelling, maybe crying, definitely accusing. Your logical brain shuts down, and your emotional brain takes over. Now you're operating on her level, in her arena, playing by her rules. You're in the boxing ring with Mike Tyson trying to box. Of course you're going to lose. You abandoned your strength, stoic, masculine energy, and tried to compete in emotional manipulation. That's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. The correct response to emotional manipulation is not more emotion. It's not logic either. It's indifference. When she's screaming about how you're controlling, manipulative, insecure, you don't defend, you don't attack, you don't engage. You let her exhaust herself like a toddler having a tantrum. Then you implement consequences based on behavior, not words. You don't punish the tantrum, you address the actual issue. Let me give you a real example. Your girlfriend is constantly on her phone during dinner. You've asked her to put it away, she says okay but never does. Here's what most men do. They keep asking, then demanding, then arguing about it. Here's what you should do. Next time she's on her phone during dinner, you get up and leave. No words, no explanation, just leave. Go do something you enjoy. When she texts asking where you are, you don't respond immediately. Let her sit with the consequence of her choice. She'll be furious. She'll accuse you of being childish, dramatic, manipulative. She'll say you're overreacting, that you're crazy, that you're immature. Good. Let her say all of it. Don't defend, don't explain, don't justify. When you see her next, if she brings it up, you simply say, I don't enjoy dining with someone on their phone, so I left. That's it. No more discussion needed. What happens next time you have dinner? I guarantee she thinks twice before pulling out that phone. Not because you convinced her with words, but because she experienced consequences she didn't like. That's how behaviour actually changes. Through experience, not explanation. But here's the trap men fall into. They think consequences mean punishment. They think it's about revenge or teaching her a lesson. Wrong. Consequences are just natural results of actions. If she creates distance, you accept the distance. If she disrespects you publicly, you leave the situation. If she prioritizes other people, you prioritize other people. You're not punishing, you're matching energy. You know what's funny? Men will spend hours researching the perfect thing to say. They'll write paragraphs of text trying to explain their position. They'll rehearse conversations in their head. They'll ask their friends for advice on how to phrase things. All this effort into words that won't change anything. Meanwhile, one simple action would solve everything, but they're too scared to take it. This is why the no contact rule is so powerful after a breakup. It's not a manipulation tactic, it's a natural consequence. She ended the relationship, so the relationship privileges end too. No emotional support, no attention, no validation, no friendship. She doesn't get to keep the benefits while rejecting the commitment. But most men can't do this. They keep texting, calling, trying to convince her she made a mistake, using words instead of actions. Again, I see this pattern everywhere. Man discovers girlfriend is texting her ex. He confronts her. She denies or minimizes. He demands she block him. She refuses or pretends to comply. They argue for hours. Nothing changes. You know what should happen. The moment you discover inappropriate contact with an ex, you start creating distance. Not as punishment, but as self-protection. You don't argue about it. You adjust your investment level accordingly. You have to understand something crucial. Women will push until they find your boundary. Not your stated boundary, your actual boundary. The one you'll enforce even if it costs you the relationship. Most men don't have real boundaries. They have preferences they'll abandon the moment she threatens to leave. That's not a boundary, that's a suggestion, and nobody respects suggestions. Real boundaries require real consequences, and real consequences often mean walking away. But you can't bluff this. Women have incredible intuition for fake boundaries. If you threaten to leave but she knows you won't, you've just destroyed more credibility. Better to say nothing and adjust your behaviour than to make threats you won't follow through on. This is the paradox that breaks men's brains. The more willing you are to walk away, the less likely you'll have to. The more okay you are with losing her, the more likely you are to keep her. The less you need her to listen, the more she actually will. Because strength is attractive, and nothing shows strength like being willing to lose something rather than compromise your values. But most men are terrified of being alone. They'd rather be with someone who doesn't respect them than be single. They'd rather have bad company than no company. And women sense this desperation. They know you won't leave. They know you'll tolerate anything. So why should they listen to you? What's the consequence for ignoring you? Another conversation, another argument. That's not a consequence, that's just noise. I had a buddy who complained about his girlfriend's male friends for months. These guys were obviously interested in her, constantly hitting her up, inviting her out, being inappropriate. He'd tell her it bothered him, she'd say they were just friends. Nothing would change. You know what finally worked? He started hanging out with his ex. Not cheating, not being inappropriate, just grabbing coffee, going to lunch. Suddenly his girlfriend understood boundaries real quick. Suddenly those male friends had to go. Why? Because she experienced what she was putting him through. You want to know when a woman starts listening to you? When she realizes you're serious. Not serious in your words, serious in your actions. When she sees you'll actually walk away, when she experiences real consequences, when she understands that disrespect has a price she's not willing to pay. That's when suddenly, magically, she starts understanding your boundaries. I had a friend who complained for years about his wife's spending. They'd argue constantly about money. He'd show her spreadsheets, budgets, financial projections. She'd nod along, then buy whatever she wanted anyway. You know what finally changed her behaviour? He separated their finances, not temporarily, not as a threat, permanently. She had her money, he had his. She could spend however she wanted, but only her money. The argument stopped immediately. Why? Because consequences work, conversations don't. Here's another truth that men need to understand. If you have to constantly fight for basic respect, you're with the wrong woman. If you have to repeatedly explain why certain behaviours are unacceptable, she doesn't actually care about you. A woman who values you doesn't need to be convinced to treat you well. She just does it. Because she doesn't want to lose you. Because your presence in her life is worth more than whatever selfish behaviour she's considering. When you find yourself having the same conversation over and over, that's not a communication problem. That's a respect problem. She heard you the first time. She just decided her desires were more important than your boundaries. And every time you repeat yourself instead of taking action, you confirm she made the right choice. You prove that your words are meaningless, that your boundaries are flexible, that your standards are negotiable. The solution isn't better communication. It's not finding the perfect words to make her understand. The solution is becoming a man whose actions match his words, a man who says what he means and means what he says, a man who doesn't threaten consequences, he implements them, a man who doesn't need her to agree with his boundaries, he just enforces them. This requires a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. You have to stop seeing yourself as half of a couple and start seeing yourself as a complete individual. Your happiness, your peace, your self-respect. These can't be dependent on her behaviour, they have to come from within. When you achieve this, when you truly don't need her compliance to be okay, that's when she'll start listening. Because now you're speaking from strength, not from need. But here's the thing most men won't admit. They don't actually want this responsibility. They want her to listen because they asked nicely. They want respect without having to earn it. They want boundaries without having to enforce them. They want the benefits of being strong without actually being strong. They want to talk their way into authority instead of demonstrating it through action. You can't negotiate attraction. You can't discuss your way into respect. You can't argue someone into valuing you. These things are either there or they're not, and they're determined by who you are, not what you say. When you truly understand this, when you stop trying to convince and start simply being, everything changes. Not because she suddenly starts listening to your words, but because your actions become impossible to ignore. The mistake all men make is believing that relationships are about communication. They're not. They're about compatibility and respect. If you're compatible and she respects you, you barely need to communicate at all. She'll naturally consider your feelings because she values you. If you're not compatible or she doesn't respect you, all the communication in the world won't fix it. You're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So here's my advice, and it's simple. Stop talking so much. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying your boundaries. Stop arguing about your standards. Just implement consequences consistently and without emotion. Let your actions speak so loudly that your words become unnecessary. Become a man who doesn't need to be listened to because his presence alone commands respect. When you reach this point, you'll never have to ask a woman to listen to you again. She just will. Because the alternative, losing you, is unacceptable to her. That's the only power you have, and it's the only power you need. Thank you all very much for watching.